500 or so folks have had their lives turned upside down by the FBI and the Department of Justice. They're going bankrupt to pay for attorneys. They're losing their jobs. All kinds of calamities are befalling them because they're being targeted for, say, walking into the Capitol building, no idea they did anything wrong, and then walking out, not burning anything, not destroying anything, not looting anything. Then there are a couple of hundred people who are being held in prison by the Department of Justice with no opportunity for bail, in some cases not even yet facing charges, without access to the evidence that the Department of Justice is using to prosecute them. If this had happened to the left and it was President Trump who arrested a bunch of nonviolent protesters who were holding them without bail for 6 months, that would never be allowed to happen by the left. Why? Because they would basically have marched an army of like 10,000 to 100,000 people into D.C., shut the city down. Their media allies would be running like a hostage day counter on the Chiron 24/7.
David and I met at an event that we hosted in Greenville, South Carolina, in May, as a matter of fact. And I was present in DC on January 6th, so I got to witness a lot of what went down. And then I had also met Trennis, who is another character in the film, and then came together again for another event in Ocala, Florida. And that's where sort of David and Trennis and Juan and I all got together and decided that we were going to shoot a documentary. And it was kind of a whirlwind. We shot it in a day. It was edited in about 13, 14 days. We had a deadline, so we threw it out as quick as we possibly could. And I wanted to be the one to tell the story that these guys have gone through their lens and through how I saw things. And it's just an awesome opportunity to get together and put out something that really kind of goes much deeper into the deaths that occurred that day. So a lot of what we believe based on the evidence that we have seen and David has encountered through his dealings with Stop Hate, that we feel like this was a false flag event that brought us all together. And we're going to tell the world the story, the real story.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You guys did a great job for shooting it in one day and editing it in 14 days. Yeah, that's amazing. Roughly. I can't believe it. It's a beautiful documentary. It's real. The lighting is dramatic. The mood is somber. It's gorgeous. So congratulations. That is a big feat.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes, absolutely. Sir. Definitely.
That's great. That's great. Yeah,
that is good.
All credit on how this whole documentary looks and feels goes to Andrew. He is the man. And like he said, we met in South Carolina, and he said, hey, if you ever have a project I'd love to help with. And it was funny, this opportunity came up with Juan and Trennis, and we were discussing what we could do. And literally I called him, and I think 5 or 6 days later we were all together and shot it. And 4 weeks later had this amazing, and it was beautiful the way it worked. And while Andrew was stringing the interviews together, our team was pulling all the video from January 6th and the other topics that we used. And it was just a real God thing. I mean, that's one of the miracles in itself as to how fast it came out. And it was unscripted, guys. There was no script. It was literally, we decided, one evening what we would shoot about. Shawn helped, of course, with picking the Bible verse, the whole movie and the title and everything, and then would ask the questions. And then, it's just a matter of everyone using their gifts and talents, together as a team. And it was just beautiful. I'm glad to be a part of it.
So, Andrew, I do have a question for you already.
Sure.
This question is from Tron. He says, where is Andrew from originally? I hear that sweet Southern accent.
I thought I had gotten rid of that, but I guess I haven't. I am originally from a little town called Gaffney, South Carolina. If anybody ever watched the Netflix the Netflix show
House of Cards.
House of Cards. Yeah, I don't like to bring Kevin Spacey up these days, but yes, his character was from my hometown. Born and raised on a farm 200-acre farm out in the middle of nowhere, and currently reside in the mountains of upstate South Carolina.
Okay. Good old Southern. I'm actually in North Carolina, so I'm not very far from you.
Oh, well, you did a better job of getting rid of your accent, though.
Thank you. Thank you. It comes up. They tell me, the mods tell me that my accent comes out every once in a while. So I see we have Shawn here now. Shawn, you're muted. If you would like to say hi and kind of introduce yourself and a little bit about how you came into developing Bloody Hill.
Hey everybody, good to be here. Thanks for having me. Shawn Witzemann. It's funny, I'm here on an old alias, which was Krampus Snatch, which goes back to my hockey playing days. But yeah, I was following a lot of things that were going on in the aftermath of the election. So I was in DC as a journalist for every rally ahead of January 6th. And obviously I was there on January 6th. I was actually in the building. I was charged. I've since pled guilty to a Class B misdemeanor of picketing and parading in the Capitol building. And, over the course of the last year or so, it really kind of became more important to me to dig into what was actually going on that day. David Sumrall with Stop Hate really gave me an opportunity to do that. And so that was really how I got involved in one way, shape, or form. That's the short version. I don't know how long we want to get right now, but no, it was really an honor. David gave me a call. He was working with 107 and obviously Trennis as well. And he said, "Well, why don't you get down here? I think we need you down here." So when we went to do the principal photography, I took off down to Alabama and we knocked it out.
Very nice. And yes, I'm sorry. We're all kind of missing Trennis right now, but he has a very important date on Tuesday for his sentencing. So if anybody would like to say a special word of encouragement and pray a special prayer for Trennis, that would be wonderful. He is a good man and has been really good to all these guys, especially like David. David is he's the respected leadership. He is a guide. He's wonderful. And I'm very glad that he was a part of pulling everyone together for this documentary.
Well, that's where the fun is. It's not about, what you know sometimes. Well, sometimes it is, but who you know. And this team building and connecting people, that's the beautiful part of the story because, honestly, it could help, Trennis. It could help, some of the defendants, but it could help everyone. This is the truth that we need to get out to the public about the day. It's not about, any one particular version or angle either. It's Juan, it's Trennis, it's myself telling our own, version or the way we view what these different parts of this verse, how it applies to January 6th. It's amazing, literally, what Andrew was able to stitch together from that. And, I can't stress on the fact that everything that we cover, everything that's in the movie at all, it's completely unscripted. Everything was just sporadic from the hip, and there was no take two. It was just us trying to convey how we felt. I think that rawness really comes through and what makes the film for me, because it's not canned. It's in the video. I think that we interjected into this is the real story that people have been deprived through regular media, and even what we have access to on the right, even the work that we've done. We've tried our best to get this out there, but the censorship, it's so real, and the narrative from the left is so strong. The propaganda war is more than information war at this point. That's why this film is so important for people to share. Every day or two, just put it back out, and until people get sick of it. Yeah.
I agree, David. Go ahead, Andrew.
I just want to add to what David said, because he said something that kind of got my attention. It was the film's not canned. I think it's important for all the audiences to know that none of them were in the room with each other when they were being interviewed. So their stories, they came together on their own.
Mm-hmm.
So this is that just speaks to the real world lens of what we saw that day, what has been experienced after the fact, and what millions of other people saw that day.
Mm-hmm. What really, I'm not going to give out any spoilers, but the end of the movie is good. I text David the day it came out, like immediately after I watched it, and I was like, "You got me," So it was very special. You can tell that everybody, took their time and sat quietly with their thoughts and spoke to the camera. I do have a question from one of our members, Missy. She asked, what was the hardest part of making the documentary?
That would have to bounce over to Andrew and probably Shawn, actually. I know Andrew didn't get any sleep for the several weeks in a row. I know Shawn had some very specific, chores ahead of him as well. I think it was a great experience. I'm not gonna. It was easy for me. Hey, I sat in front of the camera. Andrew did the rest, and I helped the team find some clips. That was pretty easy for me. I had everything, and,
Right.
So let these guys take that one. It's funny.
Well, I guess I'll go first since I did my part kind of in the post. I mean, when we were filming it, I mean, that was hard in and of itself. I mean, obviously there were times when I was talking to each of the individuals and some of the subject matter is very upsetting, especially as somebody who was there and as somebody who saw plenty of garbage, for lack of a better word, myself. And then even going back through all the video, I mean, that was tough. And even though a lot of the video doesn't necessarily, come central because it is a narrative-based film, it was like everything that went in to back up what these guys were saying when we questioned them. And so it's like you're sitting there going through all of it, and it's like you watch somebody get murdered, half a dozen, 24 times as you're going through it. And it really starts to make your soul ache.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I could say. So, I mean, that was tough. There wasn't a lot of sleep. We were working on a very short schedule. And then, of course, I was kind of in between things because, as some people know, I spend a lot of time on the road. And so it's like I was heading out on the road again, and then it got turned over to Andrew, and he really just put it all together absolutely beautifully. So
the biggest challenge for me was not necessarily storyline, because I already had a great picture of what the storyline was going to be,
Mm-hmm.
but it was sourcing hundreds of different sources for all this footage, and really digging into the footage. That's where things get they
It's
start
the footage and the headlines too. The headlines were
Yeah.
really important, and they were timed perfectly with the footage, and definitely.
It was a lot of digging. And there was another person involved with that who does not want his name mentioned because he is also being targeted. Is the best word for it. All the guys that are going through these DC Gulag stuff, they're targeted.
Mm-hmm.
And he was really, between him and Shawn, they were both instrumental in digging all the research up to back up what was being said in the story. That was the hardest part, was to have to go through it all and see it and drag it out and look at it over and over and over again. Watching Ashley Babbitt get killed from multiple angles was challenging. It was challenging. It really does something to your soul when you say, this happened in our country. And this is not the America that we know. And we have a whole new fight on our hands.
no, exactly. And that's what I saw. I mean, especially, and I didn't see some of the most violent situations between police, but it was just like even what I did see with my own eyes. And, I've always said that the day was a bit traumatic for me. And I think that's what's interesting is a lot of people get a lot of different ideas of what happened that day. And a lot of people didn't see what I saw. And a lot of people, saw things that were much worse. And other people saw nothing but peace. So it's a very big building, a lot of things going on and a lot of things to go through.
Let me jump in there and add to this that we all saw what we saw, but nobody saw it all. You know, I think that's a really interesting concept. And that's what Shawn's saying. To back that up, the reason you need to see this is to see what you haven't seen. And by doing that, listen, Shawn called me 4 or 5 days into the big push, and he said, man, this is hard to watch and need a break. You know, it's been straight day after day after day, 20 plus hours looking at death and destruction and carnage. And, you know, that does take its toll on you, but that's the reality of the brutality side of things, not from the people, but you'll see, you know, what the police were doing and going over that. And it's all public video. It's just like the censorship. People don't know. We've put a lot of this stuff out in our other clippings and our other, you know, shorts that we make, but not everybody sees it. It's different things. This movie has been beautiful because it reaches a whole different audience. People will sit and watch this and see things they didn't know. And that's where we encourage, even at the end of the film, take action. This is no good for you to watch and sit on. You have to do something with it.
That's correct. Very well put, David. I do have another question from the audience. Everybody is really excited for y'all to be here. This question is from Dark Baracho. He asks, is the title a play on Bloody Hell, or more of A Hill to Die On, or The City Upon a Hill? If you guys would just try to explain the verse that Shawn picked, or Shawn, if you would like to explain. Yeah. The verse that you picked that begins the movie, it will explain the title. I think they will understand.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good understanding of it. I mean, we kicked around the idea. We were sitting in an IHOP and going over ideas about what we wanted to do. And of course, I was doing my typical thing where I just, you know, stand around, smoke cigarettes and think. And you know, we had gone back to the house where we had intended to do some of the filming, and actually where the first scene was shot beautifully by Andrew, I might add. And so I was kind of doing that. We were all kicking around all these different ideas, and there was definitely, you know, the old journalistic principle of if it bleeds, it leads. So we wanted something that grabbed people's attention immediately as a title. I mean, everybody goes out there and they say, well, this is the truth of January 6th, or, you know, this is the real story of January 6th.
Right.
So in my mind, that wasn't going to work because it's already been done a few times. And you wanted to do we wanted to do something that really set it apart, you know, from some of the other documentaries. And so, you know, as you sit there and you think, and I'm going, you know, you go through a narrative structure in my mind, and I was sitting there just thinking, and I said, this verse is perfect. I said, this builds the whole story, because it really does come down to sin or abomination or falling short of purpose. And so I just felt that was a great way to build the story. And then as far as the title, it was just, it probably was a play on the old swear word in a way where it's like bloody hell. But it really did turn into a bloody hill there. And so it just came naturally. I remember we were sitting there and I said bloody hill. And Juan was sitting back with his hands behind his head, and he just sits up and he goes, that's it.
Yeah. Awesome.
And that was it.
That's amazing how it was, like David described, like a God thing where it all kind of came together with all of y'all in one place.
Well, that's one thing. Go ahead, David.
That many thinkers in one room. That's the fun part. I mean, these are all smart guys, and we'll hear more from Andrew here in a minute. He's timid to jump in. I'm going to make him here in a second. But you know, you look at Capitol and you look at Capitol Hill, and you know the Capitol, the like he was saying, all these different capital aspects, which you understand. You know, capital punishment, capital whatever. But the hill, you know, we all know that as Capitol Hill. So I think that was one way that you and we were able to do something a little out of the box with that. But you know, the verse, I want to cover this real quick. When Andrew was shooting that beautiful shot, Shawn said, "Wait a minute," and he goes out to his bag and he comes back with that little gold leaf Bible. That's how God prepares you for this whole thing. That's not a prop anybody brought thinking this is the thing. It's just the Bible he carries in his bag. And it was there. I mean, it's amazing the way the pieces all fell. So it's just
And
great.
it is beautiful. The gold leafing on the pages of the Bible, the way that it's shot, is gorgeous.
Oh, you should have seen us. We had
Perfect.
blankets and pillows and everything trying to block the sun out of these windows. Andrew had this vision for that from the beginning. And when he filmed it, we plugged it into the big screen there at the house and just sat there with our mouths open going, oh my gosh, look at that. You know, that's enough. That's the whole movie right there, Andrew. You can stop. It was great.
Yeah.
John, that is funny.
I will jump in and say that for me, because I'm a little bit. I had gotten tired while they were brainstorming the name, and I went ahead and went to sleep. But when I woke up the next morning, they told me what the name was. For me, it made sense in a spiritual kind of way because me being there that day, being a spiritual person, I knew that I sensed within me that we were in a spiritual battle like we had never seen before. And so the title fit for me right from the get-go, and it really, that title helped me frame the entire film from a spiritual aspect, that there's a definite evil at work within all levels of our government, and all throughout, there's infiltration all throughout our country, and we were there on that day to make a stand for what we knew was wrong. We saw it. We could sense it. We could see it. It wasn't something that could be hidden any longer. And 2 million people showed up to say, "We see what you did." But the atmosphere in DC that day, I think it comes through perfectly in the narrative of that film.
Yeah.
It really does. And I think specifically the one shot of Cooey Griffin up there just praying his heart out to the crowd as it was starting to get riled up because of the munitions being lobbed at him and all the rubber bullets or whatever, the canisters were being thrown at him. They were getting scared. And that's when Cooey came up and started praying as loud as he could, yelling at everybody to just calm down and praying to the Lord. That shot, I think, really encapsulates exactly what you were describing there. And it wasn't just Cooey. I think it was many others who were turning back. They were turning back to the crowd, just being like, you can't do this. This is not what it's about. Calm down, praying and everything. So yeah, I saw that. We see that. But a lot of people out there, guys, have not seen it. All they see is what the January 6th committee has put out and blasted all over national television.
It's funny because that's the things that are interesting to us about that day. And it's literally what we cover in the movie is what was most interesting. And it's, like I said, not that it was planned that way. It was just, when Shawn asked something out of that scripture, what about, a lying tongue? And you just start going, from each of our own perspectives, these are some of the lies. These are some of the lies. That's an interesting way to build a film in the first place, to get 3 different, views all wound into one conversation built around one video evidence that you understand how people see things different. We did that in the first movie to show different perspectives from 3 different places. This shows the 3 different perspectives from 3 different people. So it's really unique in that way. And I can't tell you how much we learned doing this movie, and how much easier the second one's going to be.
So are you planning on a sequel to Bloody Hill?
Well, not a sequel so much, but another documentary, yes.
Good.
We're pulling the trigger on another very, very important historic film. More fact-based. I think this is a great film. It has, Bloody Hill has plenty of facts in it, but it's going to come across as opinion piece or whatever. I understand that. But this next one, I think, will be really timely. So that we're trying to raise funding for that right now. I produced this last one pretty much, out of our pockets once again, and we don't charge for our work because people need the truth, and we hope for the graciousness of people and kindness and support, and hopefully this next one will get some backers to help us do a really good job and give us the time and the resources, to really do what we need to do and not rush it. I mean, this one came out great, but that's the miracle. It could have gone really south, really bad, and I can't praise these two guys enough for all their work in directing it. It was awesome.
That was one of the questions from the audience members, actually, was pertaining to, like, how did you afford to do this? This question also comes from Dark Baracho. He asked, how did you get the budget and materials to make the film? Was it self-funded or from donors, etc.? Do you plan to do anything if it makes a profit? If it can, if it will? You kind of described a little bit there, David, about how you paid for it out of your own pocket. A lot of times that's what we have to do.
We do. And the amount of time it would take to ask people for help, just get it done. I'm a carpenter. I'm blessed and fortunate enough to be able to, do that. And what is it? Rent a camera, get a house for everybody to stay at and film at, and a little bit of travel back and forth and some time. Andrew put all his time in for free. I had to pay my crew a couple of hours here and there, but that's, cut rate for what the market would do. Somebody else would charge 50, 60 grand for a film like that, I'm sure.
Oh yeah.
It just on a budget, on a shoestring, on a timeline. And it's very important, and here's the importance of it. I think you'll understand at the very end. I don't want to spoil it either, but at the very end, we're very specific about what we do and don't want. And you'll see what a timely statement that was, because 2 weeks later, it's all over the TV, and it's amazing how God works. And I can't stress that enough.
So I'll speak on that topic too. It's important to know that everybody that's involved with this pretty much use their own resources, and I feel like and I'll go back to the whole spiritual aspect of things. I had been prepared for this very moment in time for a long time, equipment-wise, expertise, and all I had to do was give my time. And David brought us all together. I think our budget, we probably, everybody all said and done, fuel to get to Alabama, we probably come out less than $3,000 or $4,000 total to make it happen. And that's just, and we didn't want to charge. That was a very important thing for all of us from the get-go, is there'd be no paywalls. There would be no sign-ups that this film goes out for the world to see, because this is our duty. We have to change the narrative that the mainstream is putting out that is obviously not the real narrative. And so it's like picking up your weapon and going into battle, except our weapon here was some cinema cameras and lighting.
And that's something that I'll say just about funding in general with different media projects. And this applies to the left, the right, and whatever remains of the center. But when you have major funders come in and they want to back something, they don't do that for free. That's there's always a favor involved in that. If people want to know why CNN is garbage, why Fox News is garbage, why all of these different organizations are garbage, they really need to look into the corporate sponsorships and understand that all of that is bought and paid for. Those narratives are bought and paid for. So that's why a film like this, being independently funded and really just pushing out that way, is so important, because there's nobody that told any of us what to say or do.
Right. You're not beholden to anybody or any entity. You can speak your truth freely.
Absolutely.
So I do have another question, guys. Very important question, especially if you want to move forward. This one is also from Tron. With the film being free, can people support your work so that you can keep making more? And whatever links that you guys want to put out there, I'll be sure to put into the movie chat and the AMA questions so everybody can have access to it. So just go right on ahead.
So I want to jump on that right
Yeah.
ahead because I'm going to beat David to the punch. Stophate.com. David is a good steward of funds.
Yeah.
And I don't think any of us want to make any money doing this. We want to change the it's all about changing the narrative. It's all about changing the mainstream narrative that is obviously a crafted narrative that is to push us in a certain direction, and it's not the direction that any of us want to go. So if anybody wants to help fund the next anything that we do, stophate.com. David's got links on there, and he's a good steward. We will, we know how to make things happen on a shoestring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I want to speak to that as well because, some people know this, some people don't, that I had always self-funded my media operations. And then, due to being prosecuted and slandered and everything else that went on in my life, I had lost pretty much everything except for my pickup truck.
Right,
And
right.
without David's support through all of this, I would have lost the pickup truck as well. Now it's like I'm in a different situation in life, and I think that some major opportunities are coming up. But that's why it's more important to support David, because I think sometimes David does a lot of heavy lifting for people, and he doesn't always get the credit. So
Right, right.
definitely support StopHate.com.
Okay,
I
guys.
absolutely heard that from Andrew and Shawn and me, David. Absolutely. So you are also a respected steward as well as a leader.
Well, y'all are sweet for all that. I do the best I can with what I have. I grew up poor. I'm not trying to get rich. It's none of that. I don't want to change my zip code or anything. And we do know how to work on a shoestring budget. But, these guys, man, they work for little or nothing. And I wish I could do more. Here's where I'm coming from. If we could ever make it, not where it's profitable, but sustainable, where it doesn't necessarily, and I've always told people, I'm not trying to not pay my part. I'm just trying to get people to match me. But somebody like Andrew with the skill that he has, that's not doing this full time for the movement, because to us it's all kingdom business, kingdom
Yep.
first. And I can tell you that about the team that we surround ourselves with. That's what our focus is. And for Andrew to be able to come on full time, for Shawn to be able to do more and stay on the road more, travel more, do what he does best. And that's always been my aspirations for them. And I support them best I can with my little company. I'm a deck builder. I'm just a carpenter, a regular guy, and my wife does well. She helps support the family and the bills, and so I can continue to support the team. And for now, that's good. I hope that through doing these projects and changing things, people will step up more. StopHate.com/help. That's where the donation thing is, and that helps the team. We've pushed for a year and a half to help the J6ers. They need it bad, and I failed to ask for myself, and it's put us in a bad spot, and that's okay because God's got our back. But that's it. StopHate.com/help. We appreciate every little bit of help we ever get.
Oh, and
Thank
also don't there is a bunch of merch that was put together too, so people can go find that over at StopHate.com. You can find Bloody Hill shirts and all sorts of things that help get the message. If you're wearing a shirt out in public, it's a conversation piece. It's no different. I don't care where I go, and I go in some pretty interesting places, but I always wear just a little bracelet that says, Justice for Ashley or StopHate.com. And it's amazing how much something that small can turn into a conversation piece. Next thing you know, you've got 3 or 4 more people who are reading the message as well.
Yeah, I agree. All right, guys. I know that, we all strive to do good out of a really bad day, and a really bad situation for, almost 900 people now. I do have an audience question pertaining to the toll that January 6th has taken. From Tron, how do you and those arrested for January 6th handle the weight of the state and corrupt media coming down on you unjustly? It has to take a toll on one's health. A lot of people are curious about that because, I wasn't there on January 6th, but every day I'm going through these cases and updating the database for Look Ahead America. So I see the weight that you guys feel, and the Jan Sixers. Like, I see it's a heavy weight.
Oh my
How
God.
do you deal with it?
Shawn, go first.
I lost everything.
Mm-hmm.
Which, when it was happening, really, when I finally died, my dream I worked a lifetime to get, and I said goodbye to it back in January of this year. It hurt, and it was a lot. But in my particular case, I try to always remind people that in many ways it's been a blessing as well, because with not having anything else to lose, really, that's an amazing sense of freedom, and so I think that as heavy as that weight is, I think that everyone, including the guys who've got it a lot worse than me and have been indefinitely detained for, where are we now?
It's almost
just hundreds
600
of days.
days.
Yeah. And it's like what that's done to their families and everything else. And the only encouragement I can give in that is that there will be justice for this eventually, one way or another. And it may not look how everyone wants it to look, but I think we all have to remain faithful. And I think we have to understand that this republic is a pretty special thing. And sometimes there has to be sacrifice in order to save something you love.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really where we're at, is that this is the battle. And it's not a battle out on the battlefield. This is a battle of hearts and minds. And we all need to learn to love each other and to trust God. So, as far as that weight goes, God doesn't give us a burden that we can't handle.
Mm-hmm.
Andrew, you got any thoughts on that, bro?
Yeah, I want to just say that there's the key thing that everybody can do to support all these people that are going through what I see as our show trials. To make a point is that, prayer is powerful. It is powerful. If people know you're praying for them, if people know that you're crossing their minds, if they know that somebody has their back. I'm an observant person, so I've got to see Trennis a lot more than anybody else in this situation, and I have seen, I've seen how it weighs on him. He's a father. He's a husband. He's got teenage kids. He has his own business. He's running nonstop at this point to try to get the message out to everyone. Shawn is running nonstop to try to open eyes for everyone. I'm just one of the lucky ones that wasn't arrested that day, but I can absolutely see it's the weight of the world on their shoulders. And David will tell you that I'll get it in my spirit that somebody's got to check on Trennis. I got to call, or I got to talk to Shawn, and I don't tell him why.
Yeah, you just check in.
They just need to hear from us. But what I will say in all of this, the people that were there that day, even the ones that were arrested, the ones that have gone through this, the ones that have seen what we saw, there is a brotherhood that has developed out of this that is unlike no other I've seen in my lifetime.
Absolutely.
And that is something that it is revolutionary is what it is. It is what I imagine our founders, 1776, meeting together in pubs and talking about how they were going to get their freedom back. This is where we are. And these are the relationships that are being established. And we're at a point where it is give me liberty or give me death. There is no other choice at this point. We have to move forward. And some of us can embrace that, and some of us are going to struggle through it. But the brotherhood that is coming out of this is going to lift each other up in these times. I believe it.
I agree. David?
Yeah, let me just close on that thought by saying, it's an unimaginable, excruciating pain that, take for instance a death. You build up some sort of a callus to that over time. You let it go enough, and you forget the things, and you remember the good and forget the bad. We want to do that with January 6th so much, but there's always the threat of that knock on the door. There's always the threat that they're going to come, that they're going to be there 6 a.m, 12 noon, whatever it is. We see this. They want 3,000 more arrests. Like you said, almost 1,000 people now have been charged. It's not any less real. It's the worst movie that you try to run and fall and you can't. And the part of it that gets it to me is the suicides. These are not people that are in prison that kill themselves. They're people that haven't made it to prison that have killed themselves. It's the people before they haven't got to the support group yet. The prisoners, we have a great support group. We haven't reached out. We haven't contacted everyone yet. It's so difficult to manage this situation that we're in, and to try to put the points on the board and to make people aware that there's help and that we want to, serve people and minister to them. And it's just, so knowing that there's been 7 suicides of J6ers, that could not take the thought of whatever was next for whatever reason, that's unacceptable, because it's false. It's caused by this government. It's not even real. The whole thing's trumped up, and they're letting people kill themselves. So that's kind of where we scream to the public that, you may think it's nothing and you can just blow it off and say, I really don't need it. What's one letter, or what's one prayer, or what's $1 or whatever. But literally that's the stuff that makes this go on and keeps these people a little bit of hope. I'm telling you, the emotional roller coaster that I am on, that Shawn is on, that all these defendants, that I'm not even like them, and yet seeing this carnage for almost 2 years, day after day, and going on speaking things and telling people about all the bad things over and over is not easy. And the sooner we get this over for these families, because they haven't seen their loved ones since they were arrested at whatever point that was. And that is unforgivable. We need to really get the public to rise up, not physically or violently, but to say enough's enough and put our foot down and say, we want our people home now. What's that going to look like, and how can we make that happen, like soon, like now, before we have more deaths? I can't stress the desperation that these people are facing right now. And they have a little hope with the midterms. We're hopeful it's something, but what if no one gains their freedom, even if we take things back? It's just so many questions. And so y'all just pray, like Andrew said, if nothing else, please pray every time you think about it for these people. And just know that they're in a really bad spot and need all the love and support that we can give them right now.
So I have one last question. And David, you and I have spoken about this. Like, where are the lawyers? Where are the constitutional lawyers? Where are the fighters in the courtroom? We're just not seeing it. We've got good ones. They're few and far between. William Shipley, Joseph McBride, Stephen Metcalf with Jed Kling. But they can only handle so many cases. There's a question here from the audience. Could you please ask how they found legal representation and how hard that was? Well, I can tell you, because like David, the desperation is serious for these people. They can't find good lawyers. And if they find a lawyer, the lawyer wants to charge them, and I'm not kidding, close to $500,000 in some cases, 250 in one other case, and about 150 in another case. It's outrageous. So how are they able to find legal representation, Dave?
That's been one of the hardest things from day one. And of course, I tried to help as many people as I could. I even made some less than good decisions. You find out about people's character sometimes after the fact a little bit, but a lot of lawyers jumped on, said they were good people, said they were going to do good things, and didn't. It is hard. There are a handful of good lawyers that are fighting, but like you said, they're limited too. I know Trennis is working on another legal coalition, try to get more points on the board for these people in an affordable way. Not everybody has $100,000 plus to defend against a misdemeanor, against this government. But here's the thing: the government continuously says, but this is sedition. This is borderline insurrection. This is COVID, this is excuse after excuse, and they kick all these things out. And it seems like all the arguments that people are trying to use just are falling on deaf ears with the judges and attorneys, the due process violations. They say these are, unprecedented times, and that's disgusting, because it's unprecedented. The government has never done this to the people before. That's what's unprecedented about it. And, I just hate it for the long-term game, because the damage that's already been done is, we question whether it's even recoverable at this point. And we know it is, but it's such a long road. But how much more can the people take, and that's our biggest concern in trying to put an end to this. And, honestly, all these people's financials should be taken care of. All their lawyers should be taken care of. All their families should be well taken care of. And they shouldn't be worried about that, because they're fighting this fight for us right now. And it's really sad that they haven't had the support that the left would have gotten if we'd have tried to make examples out of a couple of dozen BLMers or something. They'd have had millions and millions and millions of dollars in their accounts waiting for them to come out, and
now they're being taken to court. So
yeah,
because they misused the funds.
Well, sure. So we'll see how it all plays out. I'm still hopeful, and I won't give up on that. God has this. He's not wringing his hands about what's going on, and I believe that this can all be, to his glory, and so I'm all for it. I hate the hard part, the suffering part, the pain part, the death, all the destruction that goes along with that. But good grief, how else are we going to learn? We're pretty stubborn about everything, and this is about action. This is all about, we didn't take the action that we needed for years as Christians, for one, to say these are our morals, and our voting didn't reflect our faith. And I think that we have to do harder and work harder to get the schools back, get the kids back, all the things. And this is another symptom of a bigger problem that it all has to do with control, power, slavery, all the things that we talk about. And unfortunately, this is the best we could do with what we had at the time. I hope it's enough for the moment, and we do plan to do more. And I just appreciate the chance to come on here every time that you do this. It helps us and helps us get the message out, because everybody listening to go share it.
Good.
And
Yes.
That's what it's all about.
Yes.
David,
please.
I want to add to that real quick.
Go ahead, Andrew.
If I can, just so people can understand the other side of the work that David's doing. Trennis and I have had these conversations, this exact conversation, a number of times about why the attorneys are not stepping up. And when they do step up, they want the detainees to cop a plea deal. We got to remember, and I think it's an important point, specifically on the anniversary of 9/11, these guys are being held under the Patriot Act.
Yep.
They're being held under an act that was supposedly put in place for foreign terrorism.
Yep.
Right.
And so these guys have been denied their constitutional rights to a fair and speedy trial. They've been denied their Fourth Amendment rights to be secure in their possessions and to have proper search warrants and searches and seizures done. They've been denied all these things, but even when they do get good representation or any representation, the lawyers want them to cop a plea.
Yeah.
And this is why so many of these guys are still in prison, because they are not willing to cop a plea. They're not willing to say, no, I am not guilty of sedition. I was there doing my duty. And what David, his team are doing, whatever I can help with, we're pulling evidence, putting evidence together for attorneys. We're editing video footage to show hey, we can use the government's own footage, their own body cameras, to fully show the story, and the attorneys are just not willing to argue it.
I know. Yeah.
And like I have seen so many. I've been up late at night digging through audio of body cameras, isolating audio, changing sound waves so that I can actually hear what's going on. If the government would listen, and I'm talking all the way into the judicial system, which you would think the judicial system would be free of any kind of corruption, but in DC, it's obviously not. But you can't watch that footage that's been prepared in a way so that you can actually understand what the police are saying to the people that are supposedly rioting and seditious, and those that are stepping up. There was one case. I can't say who it is because he's hot in the news right now because of what the Gulag has done to him recently. But the body cam footage from what he had, his wife sent me. We were able to isolate it. The police were confused whether he was there to help them or not because they assumed that he was another officer. That's the kind of actions that the government's own body camera footage is showing, people helping protect the police officers that were there. Now, there were rowdy people there too, for sure. But even in these cases, you can't get this evidence presented in court because the attorneys aren't willing to argue it. And that's where still waiting for the new Gideon's army of attorneys to jump in and say, hey, we've had enough.
And I do want to add to this as well a little bit, is that I think that this is a point where America can really come together, because I think a lot of people on the right don't realize how long these injustices have been going on before January 6th as well. The federal system, it is corrupt. It is intended to get people to plead guilty. They routinely overcharge people. They've been doing this for decades. And so now we're seeing, veterans treated this way, and I guess what we would consider good Americans. But I think overall, when we talk about actions that need to be taken, we need to look very seriously at judicial reform. We need to look very seriously at prison reform, because everybody likes to talk about the military-industrial complex, and we could very easily get into all of the reasons why that is relevant to January 6th. But the other end of that is to understand that we live in the most imprisoned country in the world. The United States puts more people in prison per capita than any country in the world, and they've been doing this for decades. So that's one of those things, and I will always bring it back to the Martin Niemöller poem, where it's first they came for the socialists, first they came for them, and I didn't speak, and then finally they came for me, and nobody was there to speak. So now is the time for all Americans to come together and to speak up against this sort of tyranny.
You have to be brave.
You do, and I think on those reforms, we should add one to the list, and that's representative reform or official reform. I'd love to get rid of these clowns that know that no crimes happened, that have not reported them. There's murders that took place that day, and these officials are supposed to report crimes when they know about them, and they haven't. So I mean and we're supposed to trust them with our roads and bridges. Are you kidding me? I just can't understand it.
Well, just on that topic alone, David, if we go back to the original intent of our Constitution, we were supposed to be able to defend ourselves.
Exactly.
Like we were not supposed to even have to deal with it in front of a jury of our peers. Now, I don't know any one person that's in the DC Gulag right now that can go into a DC jury and say, this is my peers. Right. Or go in there and represent himself and say, hey, I'm innocent of what I'm being charged. That we have created a system that is so inundated with legalese that it is impossible to represent yourself.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, I agree, Andrew. I mean, before they stopped allowing us to be able to call in and listen to the courtrooms, it's just these DC is not, backwoods Kentucky, and it's not Seattle, Washington. It's not Fairbanks, Alaska. or New York City even, or anything. I mean, it's a totally different animal, and these people are highly politicized in everything they do. Even if they aren't, so they got an aunt or an uncle that's a DNC donor or an RNC donor, or they've given to the Obama campaign in the past, or Mitt Romney or something like that.
Well,
it's definitely not representative of the rest of America. It's totally different.
No, it's not even America. It's the District of Columbia. It doesn't even fit into, one of these things is not like the other, and that's the way you have to look at it. But here's the latest turn of events. You can't send a mail if you draw on the envelope or any picture. It has to be a handwritten letter, no clippings, no, they're even on the mail that these guys can receive. So,
right.
They're just trying to make everyone suicidal. Trust me on that. And it's horrible, and we need to really hold them to account for that.
And on that point, David, I would like to say that the Constitution itself gives Congress the full authority of how law is run in the Capitol. Our congressmen could simply pass into law that anything that needs to be prosecuted that has happened inside the District of Columbia could be prosecuted in a federal court in that person's own home district, where they could have access to a jury of their peers. That is absolutely the purview of Congress, and they are ignoring it.
For 2 years now. It all adds up.
There has to be legislative solutions to a lot of these problems. And so until Congress is held to account for its dereliction of duty, we won't see a change.
The uniparty, both sides. That's the part that people are finally waking up to. We know that they're scared of blacks and whites getting together. Wait till they see the left and right get together.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Make their heads spin.
It's what we want. That's really what we want. We're Americans first. This division thing has got to stop, or it's going to kill us all. And that's part of the design. The people that push us, it's like the jar with the 100 red ants and the 100 black ants. They get along fine until somebody shakes it, and that's kind of the moral to the story.
Well, guys, we've done an hour. I was like, hey guys, so we'll do, 45 minutes, but there's going to be 4 of us, so we could probably go a little bit longer. But I really appreciate you spending time with us tonight. I could sit here and talk to you guys for not just hours, but for days,
Well, any one of these topics turn into 10 hours real fast. We want to do a documentary, but we know it would take like 14 weeks to watch it. So it's
right. Exactly. But guys, I really appreciate it. And I'll definitely put stophate.com/help into the links for after the AMA. I would absolutely like to invite you guys to please come on to the Political Prisoner podcast. We've had J6 defendants like Shawn, Stephen Horn, Jeremy Brown's called in from down in Florida, Jake Lang's called in before. So, but we've also had people like Kara Castronova and Gary McBride and Bobby Powell to tell, because we all work in different avenues for the same goal in this whole J6 community. So I would appreciate you guys if you would come onto the podcast and have a little spot where you can talk more about what you need to get done, what you want to get done, how we can get it done, and why.
Love to. That'd be awesome.
Absolutely. Yep.
Good. And I'll definitely be in touch with you guys. I'm always hanging around. That's why they call me Ghost Vines. But awesome. I really appreciate, again, you guys coming tonight. The audience had really great questions. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We're going...
audience. That's the coolest part. I mean, it would have been fun with just you, but these people made it all worthwhile. You know what I'm saying? That's great.
Yeah, definitely.